It's my great pleasure today to welcome Academy member Jason Lovett onto Academy Live. So, welcome, Jason. How you doing, dude?
Great, man. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored.
It's absolutely our pleasure. Can't wait. I've been looking forward to this one. You've got such an interesting story and things going on with you right now. It's we had
Lots of
to
weird
we had
stuff.
to talk. So before we begin in earnest, let's hear a little bit about Jason. Who are you? What's your background, and what you got going on right now?
Yeah, well, about me, a lot of stuff going on right now, but I guess first I'll talk about my background. I guess I'm an indie developer by trade. I guess I started out probably like 6, 7 years ago, taking indie development seriously. I got started on, making small games just for Newgrounds and Flash games way back. I did Flash games back when I was like a teenager,
Wow.
and I decided to be like kind of more pro about it when I got older. Um, and yeah, I was trying to do the indie thing for a while, making games for Steam. I made a big hit called Flicks and Chill, which was like played by a bunch of YouTubers like 5 years ago.
Cool.
And that was like my big viral hit. It got played by Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, all those guys. And it
Wow.
was great, but I didn't really get rich off of it. I didn't get a lot of money. So I kind of, over time, I started to realize that you got to like kind of re-strategize, maybe work in the more profitable sectors and use my Unity skills for something a little bit more impactful. And I got into hyper casual. I started to realize what an industry hyper casual industry was, and how it's basically like indie games but on steroids
Sure.
because it's played by millions and millions of people. And so I got hooked. I got really into hyper casual. I joined the academy at one point, and that I think joining you guys was like really my turning point of when I started to realize the design and how hyper casual kind of worked. Because coming from an indie perspective, it's totally different. You know, you're not
Yeah,
making these
absolutely.
artistic games that like where you have all these emotions. You're making like a product that's played by different demographics than just like young 20s male.
Sure.
And so it's a really great space to learn. And yeah, so that's how I got started. I guess now I got hired by Homa, which is pretty crazy.
So let
Um,
me let me talk. Let's talk about that then. So it's amazing to
yeah,
hear about your background and doing the Steam thing as well. I mean,
yeah,
um, it's probably left you in really good footings for where you are now, and certainly you can certainly hone your skills there as well and cut your teeth, as it were. But let's talk about Homa Games and moving from being a solo indie like you were.
mhm.
How did the opportunity with Homa Games come about? How did you find out about the job and all of that kind of stuff? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening will go, well, actually, I wouldn't mind working for one of these big companies. Can you tell us a little bit about how that all seemed to come to be?
Yeah. Well, first of all, working for Homa is awesome. I just want to throw that out there. Definitely one of the best choices I've ever made career wise in my life. And yeah, it came about. I was doing the indie studio thing as a hyper casual developer, so working with a lot of publishers, making prototypes, and for the longest time, I wasn't getting paid per prototype. I was making these prototypes by myself, and I started to figure out that you could kind of like negotiate better. So I started to get a little bit better with the whole business side of things, but ultimately, I was really unsatisfied working like as an external studio just because I felt like I wasn't learning a lot because I was working in a vacuum,
Yeah,
and I wanted to work at one of these publishing companies to just really learn the industry from the inside. You really get a much better perspective of these things when you're working at one of the publishers. Um, so I started applying for a bunch of different companies that I knew of. I knew of Homa already, and I actually didn't see a job opening on LinkedIn or anything. I literally just went to their website and saw that they had some job openings, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, I'm just gonna apply." Um, a quick preface to that: I did apply to some other companies, and they like I had a technical interview, and I failed the technical interview at one company, and they said that like They basically said I was an amateur and didn't know what I was doing,
Wow.
and it was like it like really defeated me. I'm not going to say which company, but it's one of the. It's not like one of the top ones, but they do make a lot of puzzle games,
Right.
and they they loved my work, but they didn't. When I had the technical interview, they said that my technical skills weren't there, and it really like defeated me because I felt like, I've been doing this for so long and I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean,
And
nobody wants to hear that you're rubbish, do they? I mean, that's terrible.
yeah,
I mean, that can be crushing.
yeah,
We all have those moments in our career, whether we don't get that job or we don't get that promotion or whatnot. I mean, the
mhm,
world has changed a lot over the last couple of years, obviously with the pandemic and stuff.
mhm.
So the more remote stuff, but traditionally working for a company, we've all had those moments. So, what did you do then to overcome that and obviously keep yourself, you know, get over that blow, as it were?
Yeah, well, I took the guy's criticism to heart, and I decided to like double down and figure out where I was what I was missing with the technical side of things. So a lot of the stuff like the optimization, the stuff that I knew and did, I just didn't know how to like articulate it because I was working by myself for so long. And when you're not working in teams, they have a different way of saying things in teams than when you're just working by yourself.
Sure.
So weirdly enough, I just kept. I took a Udemy course, just like stuff, and I'm like, oh, I already know all this stuff. It actually built my confidence that I did know this stuff, and I just needed to word things a little bit differently when I take interviews. But on the complete flip side of that, I got an interview with Homa. I did the technical test. Basically, I made a prototype for them real quick. They really liked it, and I had an interview with them, and it was the complete opposite of that other interview. And this was only within probably like 3 months difference.
Got you.
They loved my work. They were super cool, super nice, super like it made me feel so much better because I was recognized and like that I actually did know what I was talking about.
Yeah, that's
And it
amazing.
was
It's just like, well, those other guys can go stuff themselves now, right? It's their loss, and it's really
yeah,
interesting, isn't it? Or like, God damn it. So like the sort of similar roles, and yet two massively different experiences just by from one company to another. And obviously, we love everyone at Homer, big friends of the
it was
academy,
crazy.
and we were thrilled to see that you got that job. So what would be your tip there for anyone doing this sort of interview? Did you pick anything up from that first experience, then onto the next one, that anyone listening in now could sort of think, oh, hold on a minute, maybe I should look out for this, or maybe I should prep a bit harder on such and such?
Yeah, well, I just honestly think, and this maybe is like a little bit conceited, but I do think that the first company had their priorities a little bit incorrect because I did know how to make games. Like they saw my portfolio. That's even how I got through to that technical interview in the first place. Like I made the game in 3 days. I made it exactly how they wanted. I did like a prototype for them too. That's how I got through to the technical interview. And once I was into he was focusing on some lot of like deep Unity technical optimization stuff, like especially like ECS, like Entitas and stuff like that, that I just didn't really know about. I didn't really know about like the entity system because honestly, it's not really something used widely. It may be someday in the future, but I'm like, look, in this industry, it's about making games fast,
Yeah,
making them good, making them polished. Optimization is important for sure, but uh, not as urgent as just getting the design. The design aspect of things, the mechanics, stuff like that,
sure. So it
making it
sounds
feel.
like I think from what you're saying, it sounds like he was focusing on like something that's like really unimportant and not focusing on.
It's important in some ways, but it's like a later on thing.
Yeah,
It's not
sure.
like the first prototype stuff.
Right, got ya. So let's talk about. So you just applied via Homer's website.
Hmm.
Was that initially for a remote? Well, I suppose we better say what your job title is.
Yeah, I'm a game developer. It's just game
Right.
developer.
So just in case, no, we hadn't mentioned that you're actually a game developer yet,
Yes.
officially. So the job from Homer was that initially for a remote position, or was it always going to be in one of their many offices now?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, but uh, I mean, there was there was two positions that I ended up applying for. So it's really strange to hear this, but I first actually declined their first offer. I was supposed to work in their Toulouse studio at first. That was the first thing that I got accepted for. And I actually turned it down because I was really into working independently and I got like really kind of I got some good offers from publishers to like with the paid per prototype deal. And I was like, I'm going to go this route because I'm going to get rich, blah, blah, blah. I was really greedy because I'm an American. That's what we do.
I
And
don't think that's US specific, to be honest, but I get your point.
But basically, I was working with a partner, and he was really just pressuring me to not take jobs. And honestly, in retrospect, it was a bad idea to follow him because he was kind of he didn't know what he was doing either. I mean, he had some ideas, but it it was all like in this industry, nobody really knows what's going to be a hit. That's why you
No,
got to test things so often.
quite.
And that's something I learned working with Homa is that even Homa doesn't know. Like that was the biggest thing that I learned at Homa is that the only reason why home is successful is because they test everything. They don't have some magic 8 ball that tells them what games are successful. We test everything. Um, but anyway, I'm caveating a little bit. Going back, I'm tangenting. Going back, I got the first offer. I turned it down, and and that was for an in person in the studio in Toulouse. I eventually came to my senses and messaged them again and was like, "Is there anything open?" And they were kind of in this like period of like not necessarily hiring a lot, but I kept in contact with them, kept making other prototypes on the side, um, and was developing my skills more that way. But I was just like, I really wanted to work for home. I wanted to move to France. I wanted to do the whole thing. And so I just was kind of like pestering them about it. And when they finally started hiring again, they decided like maybe we can start a new studio in Nantes, which is where I am now. And
Right.
because we have another developer here, we can kind of team up over here and we can kind of create like a new little thing over here. And I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. And so we went through the process. It was just a weird situation because at first I didn't decline the offer and then like I didn't start working for them for like another 6 months until I started actually working with them in March.
Wow, so that is quite a long gap then. But isn't it interesting
Yeah,
that you kept in touch and you everything was left on a really, although you declined the role, it was left on a really, should we say, positive and friendly basis. And now look, 6 months later, there's another little like knock on the door and say, "Is there anything going?" And you're in. So listen, dude, let's talk about the move from the US to France because it's something that is
yeah,
really ballsy. I got to be honest. I think moving countries, starting a new job, and I mean, it's pretty epic on the scale of life moments. Is that
yeah.
something you've always wanted to do? Did you want to emigrate, or did the whole looking at home game situation get that into your brain, thinking, well, hold on a minute, why not?
Well, no, I've always loved Europe. I've always been trying to bounce over here some way or another. I've had multiple attempts and they've all failed because of visa stuff and ultimately not being like getting a good enough visa because my game developer skills weren't good enough. I was at one point trying to get the freelance visa in Berlin, and that requires you to be an artist and have certain income basically every month, and I wasn't getting
Right.
enough income. So this is the first legitimate chance I had to get a visa here, and I took it. Yeah, I definitely wanted to. That was actually part of my like bargaining chip for if I was going to take the job. I'm like, if you guys can get me a visa to France, I will definitely take the job. And I
Well, no,
mean,
I
that
mean to
was
be
just
fair, I mean
extra
I
perk.
mean that is that's the making of a good company, right? Where they'll do this sort of stuff for you, and it's props to
Oh
them
yeah,
for sure. I mean, that's amazing, dude. It's so massive to me. So how did you find
it's
the
just
move then?
it's
Let's just
amazing.
talk a little bit about that. I mean, that must have been some epic preparation as well.
It's been a lot of work. It's definitely been a lot of work. I will say right now, Homa, and especially the HR department, has helped me absolutely every step of the way. They basically, between they paid for my flight.
Wow.
The HR department has guided me through all the visa steps, step by step, and it's been super efficient. Like I can't imagine it being more efficient anywhere else in the world for anything like intercontinentally like this. Because as a U.S. person, you don't have right to live in Europe. You have a 3-month visa max, and so it's been insanely like they have an infrastructure set up that they work really well with, and I just got to give them props because they work so hard to make this happen. And yeah, it's really cool.
That's
It's been a lot
amazing.
of work. It's been a lot of work with like just the technical stuff, like my bank not working properly sometimes. And I don't know, but overall, it's been pretty fast. I've only been here for a month now, so
Wow. So
it's
you're still in that honeymoon phase, as it were. But that's incredible, dude. And
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I know you said, but yeah, well done, Homa Games. I mean, if there's ever an advert for a company who will look after people, that's right up there, isn't it? So one of the reasons why we love Homer so much, and this just like
They're
reinforces
amazing,
that for
honestly.
sure. So you got yourself a place there now. How was it like
I'm
house
there right
hunting
now.
and
Yeah.
stuff?
They helped me with that as well. They hooked me
Wow.
up with a side company that literally looks for houses for me, and uh, yeah, they got me a nice apartment right downtown, and here I am. I don't want to
Right.
show you it because it's kind of messy, but it's
No,
pretty
that's
cool.
okay. Don't worry, we don't need a tour right now. We might ask for one a bit later, but not right now. So let's talk about the game that you've just released now. We've got some questions that have come
Mm.
in as well, but we'll touch on those. Some of them overlap and dovetail a bit. But the game Kaiju right now, before
Mhm.
we dive right into that, actually, what's the deal with you? Obviously based in the office now. How does it all work when it comes to developing games? So when you turn up in the do you get like directives from managers or stuff, or do you have creative freedom? Talk to us a little bit of the day in the life as it is right now. Oh, he's totally broken up. Let's hope he pops back in. There we go. He's back.
Internet cutting out
Yeah.
just a bit. Sorry.
So did you get any of my questions just then?
No.
Okay, I'll say it again. So, what is a day in the life at Homa Games like? How does the creative process work in terms of the freedom you have to come up with your own ideas, or do you get directives from above telling you, right, we want one of these type of games?
Yeah, well, can you hear me first? I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
we're
that
good. We're good.
everything's
We're just
coming
gonna
through.
roll with it, dude. Don't worry.
Okay, okay. Well, as long as you can hear my answer.
Yeah.
So, yeah. First of all, it's kind of a mixed bag with the ideation process, but we have this platform called Homa Lab, which is honestly like if there's any reason to join Homa, it's Homa Lab. We have this like website that's this dashboard, kind of like a Coda platform. Um, it's like a mix of sensor tower. It's got like all these features where basically you can pitch ideas onto this big dashboard, and anyone in the company is encouraged to pitch ideas. And we have a UA department that will then look at the ideas and filter them by priority. So, what ideas are basically better than others based on the current trends and just what's a good idea in general. And so, I've had the privilege of working on pretty much all my own ideas. I've only worked on, I think, 2 games that weren't my ideas out of like 12 games, I guess I made, which or something like that, maybe less. I'm not sure. About 10 games, let's say, but all of them were my ideas. I just pitched to the lab, and they told me the ideas that were bad, and they left the ideas that were good. And I was able to just be like, "Hey, I want to work on my idea because I like that one," and you guys filtered it as a high priority idea. So honestly, you have a lot of creative freedom to make your own ideas and pitch it and work on it, and it's really cool. Sometimes upper management will be like, will pitch ideas and ask us to work on it, but it's very rare, honestly. It's more so everything just goes into this lab, this dashboard, and filtered by high priority, and we just get to pick any game that's a high priority item of that list. That's just on that hasn't been picked up by another studio externally or internally.
That's amazing. How cool is that? That sounds like the absolute dream of a game developer where you can just go in and you can see all the qualified sort of ideas all been approved and they say, well, take your pick and make that one for us. That's
Yeah,
really smart. Another thumbs
it's
up
really
for
cool.
Homer. We're in a massive Homer advert here, aren't we? But it's, credit where credit's due. That sounds like a really cool system. And if anyone else is thinking about, becoming part of a big publisher like this, these are the sort of perks and the difference in working with a publisher internally rather than, externally and as a solo, right? It's just different ball game by the sounds
Yeah.
of things. So,
And
how
you
did the
think
idea of the game come about? For those who don't know, Kaiju Run is doing pretty well in the charts right now. Tell us a little bit about the game first and how you came up
yeah.
with the idea and stuff.
Yeah, well, this was just another one of my quick pitches. Actually, I didn't really think it was that great of an idea. I was running out of ideas, so I was just kind of pitching a bunch of stuff. I looked at Attack on Giant, which was my coworker or another internal production member that made this game, or a couple guys in the team in Paris made this game. And obviously, it's based on Attack on Titan, which is a really popular anime, and it's trending right now. So I'm like, if that game works because it's trending and it's coming from like a famous TV show, maybe I could just look at what's trending in the famous movies right now. And I just Googled top movies right now, top trending movies, and King Kong versus Godzilla. So I was like, okay, this is a pretty well known franchise I could probably make a spin off of. And at the same time, I think the big hit by Lion Studios was really popular. And I'm like, this game is really simple, clean mechanics. I was really like getting into the idea of making just a really simple game. I wanted to make a game that was just like clean, like voodoo style, I guess, for once, because I've always made these more detailed games. And I feel like if you want to make something more mass market, something simpler and cleaner is better.
Sure.
So I wanted to try something that's simple and clean, has a stacking mechanic, kind of like the big hit, because stacking obviously has been consistently in that kind of transformation aspect as well. And then something that had that franchise, so Godzilla and Kong. So I just made a game idea. I'm like, what if we just made a game where you start off as a cute little animal and then mutate into this giant kaiju or monster and fight Godzilla or whatever. And that was just the idea. Really simple. And I guess ultimately it was a good idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea. I mean, we talk about looking at the trends outside the App Store, right, be it in movies or anything really. If you can latch onto those sort of pop culture type stuff, you got a really good basis of an idea, to be honest. So, what about? I've got a couple of questions here. What sort of iterations did you make on this game from when it was first released? I mean, it's only been out a few weeks, right? But what did you make any sort of art style iterations or any type? Is there one thing that you changed quite radically from the first release when you got some like more real world data back?
No, actually.
Okay.
The first version that we prototyped pretty much is just the first level of the game. So we just, actually the main iteration I would say was actually while I was developing the prototype in the first week and a half. I was developing it halfway, and we had this like city on the side of the road, and we had the character was supposed to just like gradually morph, kind of like the arm getting bigger in the big hit, just like he was supposed to morph into the thing instead of having these stages. But I couldn't actually get the technical thing to work right with that. It just looked bad. It was hard to do. It wouldn't work with multiple characters. So I decided to make it like a Pokemon tiered approach where you kind of convert just step by step into the next phase. And I realized that I think that's kind of the best selling point of this game ultimately, and I think we're going to see a lot of copycats of that mechanic of like converting to the next phase when you collect a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that makes
Kind of
sense.
like Run of Life, which is
Yeah.
the voodoo game.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so like you sort of, I
So
mean,
yeah,
what's
we
good
that
about
was the
that
big
is that
point
you,
change.
it sort of pops, doesn't it? And then you're transformed in that, so you're constantly evolving, sort of thing. So we will put a link somewhere to download the game if you don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, Run of Life is another good example of doing it. But Kaiju Run does it really, really nicely, I
Yeah,
thought.
exactly.
Yeah. So what is sort of next for you in terms
Yeah.
of what you're working on, or how does it work? Do you bounce around from project to project, or do you have a set amount of time to build each prototype?
Yeah, so right now I'm just working on Kaiju Run, just updating it every week. But if we're done with Kaiju Run, or if we feel like it's in a kind of just like a state where we'll kind of do slower updates, I think I'll go back to doing prototypes. I haven't gotten back to doing prototypes yet, but usually we do a prototype a week. So this is probably the most challenging thing of the job, but also like what I like about it the most, because I realize if you want to make a hit, you're more likely to do it if you make more prototypes than less. So
Sure.
we actually have a 1 week per prototype structure here. And it's not super easy when you're first starting out, but once you get in the flow of it, it's actually way more fun and creatively fulfilling than working on a game for like 2 weeks. And then by the time you release it, it's irrelevant. The trends have moved on,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
So I
No,
think
that's.
that the one,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Sorry.
I just think the 1 week structure that we have at Homa is really effective.
Yeah, that sounds really nice. And of course, when there is sort of an appeal to working on a bigger project, but hyper casual, you've got to move fast, and the 1 week
Yeah,
prototype thing is a really cool thing. And if you're that sort of person who doesn't become emotionally attached to the games that you're building, um, it's a really exciting proposition. And of course, the more prototypes you build, the more chances you do have for success. And what you mentioned earlier about, you know, these publishers don't know what's going to work, and that is the whole basis
yeah,
of the hyper casual thing. You test everything, like you said, and so the more things you test, the better your chances are. And you might just stumble across something that you didn't think was, one element of something that you can transfer to your next project. And I guess the more you work in it, the more experience you become in it, and that's a really valuable. You make yourself a really valuable employee that way. I'm trying to think if there's some. I think we've covered a lot of the questions that have come in. Um, as an academy member, obviously, we're
mm.
thrilled you're with us and have been for some time. As is Homer, by the way. But what's one thing about the academy that you have found to be helpful for you, and what's your favourite part of it?
Yeah. Well, definitely when I was working alone before I started working at Homa, it was really nice because I think you guys are like the only people on the internet that are covering hyper casual as extensively. I can't think of any other group. Maybe the Discord groups that have come out or the Facebook groups, but it's all text based. It's not very effective. It's kind of all over the place. A lot of people throwing deals at your face. This is just a mastermind group where you can focus on the design aspects in detail, in deep about different games, and it's really important, especially if you're an independent person, to have other people's advice. Uh, just seeing what the trends are on a relatively frequent basis, because I don't have time to download a bunch of apps myself and play them. So it's much better and easier to have somebody else play them and I just get a quick recap, which gets my mental gears spinning about what the trends are right now. I think ideation is one of the hardest parts of this industry, and you have to know what's out there right now, what's popular, so that you can then kind of get your creative gears flowing and then making something the next thing, the next iteration of that.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Because I mean, that's what we focus on, right? We understand this. I mean, we're game developers too, although we haven't built anything for quite a while
Yeah.
now. But yeah, it's one of the
Mm.
things when you're working on your own. It's just like we are allowed to talk to each other. We are humans. Like everyone's so scared of sharing all their ideas, but for the most part, you won't have. It's impossible to make all your ideas. And even if you do one a week like you,
Mm.
which is going some, that's only 50 ideas a year, and that's not that many really.
Yeah.
So
Still
really,
not that.
go on. We have some internet connections here, guys, so bear
I'm
with us.
sorry, I lost you
Yeah, no, it's
for a
okay.
minute.
So yeah, we're really thrilled you're part of it, and like I said, it seems just a few weeks ago now for me that we were saying well done for landing the job, and now you're here with a chart-topping game, and we couldn't be more thrilled of what you've done, and I'm completely in awe that you've emigrated and done the whole deal. I think that's so amazing, and once again, massive props to Homa Games for sorting
Yeah.
you out and helping you with all this stuff and giving you the opportunity. So if you want to go and get a job, there doesn't seem to be any better place in the world to work in hyper casual than Homa Games. So massive respect to
I
them.
don't think there is, honestly. I do want to say real quick, we have a motto here at Homa, which kind of trickles into all of our tools and the way that we interact with all the external studios and internal studios. It's called Unlock Creativity. That's like the motto, and it really is like the place to go to unlock. Like it unlocks creativity. Just all the systems that are set up at the Homa Lab, especially the ideation process and the way that it all kind of works. It's just the most efficient platform I can think of to like just if you want to get a hit fast and move the most efficiently, I think Homa's on it. They have just such a structure about them that is it's always looking one step ahead and always doing all the legwork to get this to know what is the step ahead.
Go yeah.
Because that's the hardest part. You can't just like guess. You have to have research. You got to have data. We're half a data company. Honestly, we're more data than game development because we just need to know what works on a hard, realistic level.
Sure.
You can't just keep guessing.
Yeah, but one thing that I always like to say is that the data only comes from the creativity, right? So unless you've got an
Absolutely.
idea and a prototype, you can't get data on nothing. So that's why we really focus on the ideation too, because that is, like we said, one of the hardest things. And without that, you don't have any data to pull from. But anyways, with all that said and done, Jason, I think that's going to go and wrap it up for us there. Um, I can't
Cool.
thank you enough for taking the time out. I know we've had a few little blobs on the internet there with the connection and stuff, but thanks for bearing
Yeah.
with us. I am looking forward to doing a deep dive on Kaiju on Friday, which is a couple of days' time
Sure.
on Academy Live. So hopefully you'll be able to join us there like you normally do and talk us through some of it as well, perhaps. But I'm looking forward to playing that and wish you all the success for everything that comes out of your hands from Homa and, of course, Homa Games themselves. So, with all that said and done, thank you, Jason. We will speak again very soon, and thanks for taking the time out to spend with us today.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
We'll
Have a
speak
great
soon.
one.
See you later.
Yep.